Donk Nation, Jax and Janet's greetings and welcome to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey, bringing you some nonsensical Steelers talk. It's the off season. I'm here by myself. So the question is, what in the world could we possibly talk about? Is the loss of Tristan Thompson a big enough news breaking story? I mean, I really like the way T Squared played. I thought he showed good ability on the field to be let go already. Kind of not something you want to see. Same with Mims, wide receiver getting let go. But not at the end of the day, these are end of roster guys, not something to talk about. So to keep it interesting, I thought we would go into this week, keep it the nonsensical self, and let's break into the nonsense that is predictions, the nonsense that is ex- explaining why a team's going to work or not work, because everyone knows, everyone says things, everyone has their opinions, and at the end of the day it shows up on the field what these guys do. But let's go ahead and break ourselves into the absolute ridiculous practice of the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, where does the best case scenario start with? Is it the offense coming alive, or is it that defense taking a step from good to elite? Well, I think if we're going to talk best case scenario, we obviously have to start on offense. And I'm not even going to try to get into which quarterback works out. What I'm going to say is we got to start on offense, and we know Arthur Smith's a run first guy. So, best case scenario clearly is this offensive line, whoever ends up starting, let's start and let's say the five is, because it seems like maybe Troy Fontanu has a chance to win in, but we'll say he doesn't win a job. It's Dan Moore Jr., it's Isaac Simualu, it's, let's say, Herbig beats out Frazier, as we're going to just let the veterans have the jobs here. That means it's James Daniel. And of course, on the right side is Broderick Jones. The best case scenario, I think, here is you get a team that is average at pass pro, but with Broderick Jones leading that right side with James Daniel, Isaac Simualu being able to pull, Herbig able to actually hold his own in the middle, you have an offensive line that becomes elite at run blocking. Arthur Smith designs up plays that work well, and you're looking at not a single back production, but you're looking at a two back production that's going to show you receiving yards and rushing yards. Let's just call it total scrimmage yards, close to what CJ2K did for Tennessee. Or I don't really want to say Derrick Henry in the height because I need a little more receiving production than what Tennessee got out of Henry. But let's say I really think CJ2K is a good example that the two backs both go in there and dominate. And of course, that leads us to part number two. Part number two of the offense working is clearly those running backs having vision, hitting the holes, making it work. That means you're going to see Najee healthy and, being more explosive than he's been in the past, getting more towards Lev Bell area of explosive runs where you get that just at league average over 20-yard carries or just slightly below league average 20-yard carries, which would be a step up for Najee to this point in his career. So you see a step of an explosion from him, and what you see is a higher volume go to Jaylen Warren, but the production numbers stay the same. I think this is what leads the Steelers to best case scenario on offense is clearly the explosion coming out of the running game. But that can't be all. The tight ends have to step up. Darnell Washington, wherever they end up putting baby Hayward, Firemouth has to really start blocking. And what you see is just this run game become an encompassing attack. And we don't get explosive numbers out of the wide receivers. We see Firemouth revert back to his rookie year with Ben. Solid numbers, top 10, between the 10 and 6 range in tight ends in terms of production. That's what leads here. A big red zone target. And we see the breakout of George Pickens as a true number one. That is what I think is the linchpin here. I think quarterback play is going to be adequate. I don't think it's going to be anything special. And my best case scenario doesn't even have special quarterback play. What it has is adequate quarterback play with a breakout star in George Pickens, because that would be the best case scenario. George Pickens breaks out, and then you get number 3 wide receiver production out of the next 2 guys on the list, however you want to phrase them, throw them in there, whoever you want to throw in there. For me, the guys that I'm going to see number 3 receiver or production from is Wilson, speedy rookie from Michigan. And I really think the guy who's going to maybe step up in this scenario be Van Jefferson. So you get number 3 production from both of them, but you have a bona fide number 1 in Pickens, and you have Pat Freiermuth turn into that bottom tier top 10 tight end guy. That's, to me, what makes the best case scenario. And I already said, I don't really feel it bangs on the quarterback play here, because I don't expect Russ to become MVP level Russ. I expect him, if he's going to be the guy in the best case scenario, he's going to turn into like the last 2 years at Seattle, where he's not a guy who's going to single-handedly win a game, but he's definitely not a guy who's going to lose you a game. He's going to be a step up from what Ryan Tannehill was in Tennessee. And now if we go to the other side of the coin, if it's Justin Fields, I think what makes the best case scenario here is Justin Fields just absolutely cuts that turnover number. He's an explosive addition to the running game. And while I don't think he'll be a highly accurate passer, let's say he falls in somewhere like year 2 of Josh Allen or year 3 of Lamar Jackson, where the passing numbers aren't great, but they're good enough to win, and they're scary enough to make this team look detrimentally good. I know that sounds weird, but detrimentally good when you're facing them, because that means that's not the team you want to play. That's a team that can beat anyone with explosiveness. So I think that's where the best case scenario comes in. And I really do feel the best case scenario for the Steelers here is very dependent on establishing a dominant running game, starting with the offensive line and the backs, a breakout campaign from both Freiermuth and Pickens, and adequate quarterback play where it doesn't feel like it's been holding you back, like we saw some of the young lumps from Kenny Pickett the last couple years. The same things Justin Fields went through in Chicago. Hopefully those no longer exist. Or some of the things that bad veteran bring-ins like Mitch Trubisky have done here. Hopefully we don't see that. If it's Russ in the veteran role, it's a guy who gets to roll out there and really gets to, his comeback tour really is a thing to talk about in Pittsburgh. Now let's get into what's best case scenario number 2. I think it's special teams, and I think you look at an elite return game, whoever ends up getting back there and returning the kicks. I really think Roman Wilson is the guy to talk about doing it. The kick return game becomes a big part, and the punting with Johnson now is a plus for the Steelers, and all of a sudden the field position game really sets up for this defense that, hey, it's best case scenario. So we're talking a defense that takes a step from what was a good defense last year to elite. You talk about TJ Watt goes off, has another TJ Watt year. It's right up there for record in terms of sacks. Cam Hayward stays healthy and turns back Father Time. Larry Ogunjobi looks like he did 3 years ago, where he was a dominant nose. We see Keanu Benton turn into the next Javon Hargrave. All of a sudden, the front seven's scary. You're talking Highsmith on the other end gets into double-digit sacks, and maybe the big surprise is Nate Herbig, baby Herbig, out there gets 7 sacks as the, substitute edge rusher, and this defense just really gets to the quarterback, stops the run, sets up the front 7, killing it. We've only talked about the 5, so of course that means we have to have whoever steps up in the linebacker 2 really do a good job there. And Patrick Queen goes out and shows that he's this generation, I guess, versions of James Ferrier, right? A good linebacker who came here with some question marks and just turned into an absolute stud, an absolute core centerpiece of this team. I think Patrick Queen is that guy who potentially is the most important part in the front seven. I mean, obviously, health of Hayward, rebound of Ogunjobi, the continued development of Keanu Benton, rebound from Highsmith, development of Herbig are all big things. But Patrick Queen is going to be the center point to really helping stop the run, maybe keeping a healthy middle linebacker and moving there. And then we get to the secondary. Uh, Man, I don't know what to talk about the other safety, but let's just say any of the guys, Elliott, KZ, any of the guys on this roster allow Minka to go back to being center field Minka, and he has a season much like he did when he was an all-pro early in the Steelers things, brings back, top 5 safety Minka here, earns that contract. Clearly, that's going to be a big step. But the most important step for this defense and development of the whole thing, not just the front seven, this is the whole thing, is Joey Porter Jr. becomes a legit top 10 cornerback, a legit shutdown corner on that side. And whether it's Donta Jackson, whether it's any of the young guys we have out there, Corey Trice, or brought in Rush last year. I mean, if it's Cam Sutton coming back from suspension, Beanie Bishop making his spot known, someone else establishes, whether as the slot or the number 2 corner, an absolute shutdown spot as well. That's what's going to make this Steelers' best case scenario. Now, in this best case scenario, the Steelers still have a ridiculous end of schedule. What does the best case scenario lead us to record-wise? Clearly, best case scenario, the Steelers are 14-3, and they finish first place in the division by 2 games. To me, that is the Steelers' case for what could be the best that happens. And depending on whether or not the Steelers win that Kansas City game on Christmas will determine who gets home field advantage in the playoffs, because the Steelers will be the 1 or the 2 seed depending on who won the Kansas City game. That's what I think is the best case scenario for the Steelers. Please let me know what you think about my ideas. Leave your ideas of what's going to happen. Tell me your best case scenario for the Steelers. Well, I'm sure at some point, I don't know when Gingy and Laskers will be back or when I'm going to do another one with Bug Boo. If you didn't catch that, yeah, listen, little guys got it going. Leave me your thoughts here on this. We'll do a worst case scenario. Tell me what you think. What do you think the best case scenario for the Steelers is? Where you think I'm wrong on this? And who you think is the most important part for both the offense and the defense to reach the best case scenario for the Steelers. And maybe you're one of those people who think the best case for the Steelers is to lose. I'm not sure. I've been debating with myself whether I think that is the best case scenario for the Steelers long term. But you know what? At the end of the day, why not just live the dream and say, hey, you know what the best case scenario is? Being that team that a lot of people have already said there's no chance with because we're missing too many parts. Let us be that team that takes the next step. And best case scenario is, why not another Super Bowl run, right? Why not get ahead of those teams who seem to be catching us or have caught us in Super Bowl wins? So let's go ahead and have that be the best case scenario. I guess that means it's time to do a shout out, and I don't know who we should give a shout out to this week. I mean, lots of not fun stuff going on in terms of here. UFL's done. Not really. I guess the Pirates are winning some baseball games here or there. I guess that's where we can give a shout out. Brian Reynolds just had a 20-game hitting streak that's still going on with his home run and single today. So let's give a shout out to Brian Reynolds, the guy the Pirates got back for Andrew McCutchen way back in the day with the trade with the Giants. Let's give him a shout out for having the longest hit streak since Nate McLeod some 16 years ago when I was still probably in high school. So let's go ahead and give him the shout out for this week. And now I'll let you know I am the Viking Donkey. That's Viking_Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of Donkey Gingers, the YouTube channel where you get all this fun content. Be sure to leave a like, comment, a follow. We'd love to hear what you want to hear about, so I don't have to try to think of all the nonsensical things to do, obviously predictions are nonsense, so I think that keeps well within the theme. But Donk Nation, Steeler Nation, love y'all. Wave them if you got them. Let's go Steelers.